After over 40 hours, I've 100% in Marvel Spider-Man 2. I got the Platinum Trophy, every suit, and beat the game on its hardest difficulty, Ultimate, despite not having a trophy linked to it. Now let's discuss if Insomniac's second chance at a superhero game can rival the greats such as the Batman Arkham series. This review will contain spoilers. Let this serve as your first and only warning. Spider-Man 2 takes place after the events of Miles Morales. Peter and MJ are back from their trip covering the conflict in Symkaria to mixed results. Peter has taken a new job as a teacher, and MJ is attempting to save her job at the Bugle now that JJ is back in charge. After an opening calamity involving the Sandman that easily overshadows the previous games, start with the Kingpin, highlighting the power of the PS5 to its fullest, Peter and Miles skip school, resulting in Peter's firing. But things get worse when foreign hunters led by Kraven the Hunter venture into New York looking for new prey worthy of him. Kraven the Hunter is a force to be reckoned with, and the stakes are constantly raised as Peter and Miles combat even more dangerous threats, each one bleeding into the next, with the final conflict leading to a world-ending disaster. The narrative is really a step up from the previous games, not only in misfortune but in death. One of my biggest complaints that was highlighted in Miles Morales was the lack of significant consequences, and this game still suffers from that issue. Like in Miles Morales, when Rhino and Finn rampage through New York, we get similar situations with the Lizard, and somehow no one dies. I don't know what New York this game is modeled after. I know it's a made-up version of New York in the Marvel Universe, but still, when someone or something rampages through the streets of one of the busiest cities in the entire world, regardless of time, that results in mass destruction, cars flipping over, and buildings getting smashed through, someone is going to die. It just doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why Insomniac keeps insisting that no one is hurt in this situation. There are going to be bodies everywhere. You did have some major moments involving death, but they were usually limited to only significant characters. Some deaths shocked me, and it showed that Marvel was confident with Insomniac deciding how to forge the future of this series and possible universe, as it's been confirmed that Wolverine will take place in the same universe as this Marvel Spider-Man universe. Most importantly, the strength of bonds that can easily be broken if not cultivated. The voice cast, animators, and writers really went above and beyond and showcased that relationships between everyone are crafted with intricate detail. Peter and Miles come from two different worlds. Peter is still attempting to balance his life as Peter and Spider-Man, not to mention adulthood, while Miles repeats the same story formula as in Miles Morales. It's really kind of insulting to the character that they just simply rehash the Miles Morales narrative in a lot of ways. Their friends interact but remain separate, especially the relationship between Miles and Harry. Both of them share a profound relationship with Peter, but have trouble connecting to one another. All these bonds are tested throughout the game in very strained conditions, often leading to life or death situations. I say that Miles' story is a repeat of Miles Morales because it follows the same formula. Miles helps his friends while also connecting with his community. This isn't a bad thing to follow, but it ends up with Miles feeling like Isaac Clarke from the original Dead Space, an errand boy who just takes on minor tasks. It has less to do with the overall narrative and more about Miles' personal story, which is okay, but that was the whole point of Miles Morales, and it's just on repeat here. Compared to Peter's side content, which complements both the overall narrative and builds on the previous games, such as Yuri, it just seems that the story was left on the cutting room floor and they just rehashed something to fill Miles' void in the narrative. It's only in the final act that Miles' story really gets a jump start as they incorporate him back into the main story. It almost seems like he's just doing his own thing until Peter is ready for him, or the Insomniac writers are ready for him, kind of just in the background, just waiting to be called in, like someone's shining the bat signal for Miles to show up. The final act leads to an explosive encounter involving fists, blood, and emotional disasters. Spider-Man 2 really doesn't pull any cheap shots here, and it goes straight for the feelings. The key figure is of course Venom, and he's everything I could have hoped for, from Spider-Man taking control of the symbiote beforehand to the eventual birth of the massive monster. Trust me when I say Venom is both expected and unexpected in his execution, but nevertheless exceptional in every way. It's one of my favorite interpretations of Venom, and it's absolutely amazing. As for the supporting narratives, Insomniac includes a combination of complementary stories for the core narrative and supplementary stories that hint at future villains for the possible next game. The story can suffer from small leaps of logic, and Mary Jane's insane plot armor gets painfully obvious as the story continues. The ending is also very underwhelming. It hints heavily at a third installment, but it doesn't really land the mark. It's definitely a downgrade from the first game and how its ending transpired, where Peter lost so much and just had to find a way to continue forward despite being on the verge of collapse. Another issue I personally had is everyone taking off their mask all the time. If you thought Andrew Garfield from The Amazing Spider-Man was bad, it is way worse here. All the time, Peter and Miles are taking off their masks. So many people know they're Spider-Man, and Miles even keeps his costume in the middle of his room for everyone to see. For a secret identity, Peter and Miles really want everyone to know who they are. And especially in a city that has over 20,000 cameras and everyone has a smartphone ready to record anything. I mean, why do you keep taking off your mask? It makes no sense. This does complement another major issue I have. Everyone knows who Spider-Man is. You'll rarely encounter someone who doesn't know Peter or Miles is Spider-Man. One of the key foundations of Spider-Man was keeping his secret identity to prevent others from getting hurt, creating a huge issue where personal relationships are tested because he constantly had to keep this secret. Honestly, with as many times as Peter and Miles have taken off their mask, I'm surprised everyone in New York doesn't already know that they're Spider-Man at this point. The story is great, but doesn't soar to anything truly amazing. It's emotionally charged and really highlights the importance of personal bonds when facing oblivion. It just misses the landing at the end. Much of Spider-Man 2 builds on the original's gameplay. The third-person beat-em-up combat is still here with slight changes to the game's difficulty. Before, I never used any gear unless I was playing on the hardest difficulty in the original game and Miles Morales, but here the developers properly balanced the use of gadgets and abilities for dynamic encounters. Sometimes you'll have an ally supporting you similar to Batman Arkham Knight, but not to the same degree, whereas there you can swap between the characters after executing an enemy, but here it just allows you to play as that one individual character. It's definitely a cool addition and may hint to possible DLC or a future installment where these characters are available to play, seeing as their abilities complement Spider-Man's abilities with their own twist. That being said, fighting is still basic but improved. The most significant change is the addition of parrying. Some attacks cannot be dodged and must be parried or completely evaded through jumping. It's definitely not as intricate as the Batman Arkham series, but it's more in line with Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor. The base enemy pool is varied enough, but with factions having more or less the same combination of skills and abilities. But you have your baseline enemy, those with range attacks, brutes that require parrying or tools to break their defenses, robots that can lock you out of your abilities, and the symbiote enemies towards the end of the game, which are nimble and capable of dodging more variations of Spider-Man's attacks. If you deal enough damage, you can charge up a focus meter. This allows you to either heal yourself or deal a one-hit KO to baseline enemies, with bosses usually requiring 2 focus bars to deal heavy damage to their health. Miles and Peter have access to their own limit break ability, with Miles able to send out a massive surge of Venom and Peter going into a berserk mode that deals heavy damage and recharges his abilities quicker. Speaking of abilities, Peter and Miles gain access to a variety of abilities linked to the L1 button. You simply hold L1 and choose one of the face buttons, and you can customize this as you wish. Peter features his Iron Spider claws and symbiote abilities, and Miles with his Venom abilities. The other options include gadgets, all of which recharge based on your performance and offer a variety of combat options such as tethering enemies together, shooting web ricochets, using pulse bombs which can disarm enemies when fully upgraded. Each of these gadgets can be upgraded and offer different options in combat. In fact, they're really overpowered, especially when you upgrade them to their full maximum level, especially on ultimate difficulty. Web shooters still remain insanely powerful. If you knock enemies down, you can easily web them up for an easy takedown, but it does have a charge of how many times you can use it before you can use the web shooters again. Stealth remains largely the same. The newest addition is the web line, a more powerful version of Batman's line launcher. With this, Spider-Man can launch walkable lines of web that make stealth takedowns a breeze. You can easily breeze through enemy forces using the dual takedown, but it is the final ability that you get, and you can only use this on the web lines. Since enemies rarely look up and the game indicates when it's safe to perform a silent takedown, either by hitting the square button and webbing them up or doing a webline takedown. Enemies will be easy to take down unless you have bad timing, luck, or an obvious mistake is made, especially when coupled with Miles' camo ability. Peter doesn't have any unique stealth ability, so Miles is generally more favored when it comes to stealth, and the only enemies that can evade the camo are the Sandman enemies, but those are very specific encounters and you can't use stealth during those specialized events. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is definitely a game that gets easier the more you invest into it. You can upgrade both your active skills and baseline stats by collecting medals in the form of common and rare tech and hero medals through completing activities. Baseline medals are given through common activities like stopping random crimes around the city or in chests left behind by the Tinkerer's forces and Kraven's hunters. Hero medals are the rarest and only obtained through actual missions and challenges. On ultimate difficulty, the beginning 2 hours were the hardest due to the high enemy health, but once I invested enough tokens, I was unstoppable. In fact, towards the end of the game, I was taking out enemies left and right because I was just so overpowered. You can switch between Miles or Peter at any time, but most missions are exclusive to one or the other. There are only a handful that allows you to pick either Spider-Man to use for that mission, but it plays out mostly the same with only just slight changes in the dialogue. The developers did include dialogue based on when you complete the side missions based on the overall narrative, so that's definitely a treat if you decide to complete the missions later on in the story, as you'll get extra dialogue based on what Peter and Miles know about the overall narrative. The side content is a mixed bag. Peter's side content is definitely more entertaining and interesting, having him track down cultists, whereas Miles is treated like an errand boy, either helping his classmates or his mother with their own issues, usually involving the community in some fashion. This wouldn't be bad, but Miles had his own adventure doing this, so why is he treated like the lesser Spider-Man here? I mean, one of his missions literally involves him helping a classmate ask his boyfriend to homecoming. I'm like, why is Spider-Man being bothered with that? Or even rescuing a mascot suit? It's just like very confusing. I get that he goes to this school and he feels obligated to help his fellow students, but at the same time, he's Spider-Man. Isn't there more important things he should be doing? Like, I don't know, saving someone from a robbery or someone who's about to, like, get killed? It's just like, why is Miles being treated like the lesser Spider-Man here? So there are Mysterio challenges that are definitely a step up from Screwball from the original game. Making them only available to Miles, though, seems lackluster. The developers could have created a situation where Miles gets his own villain, even in an original creation. It just seems like it's a repeat of Miles Morales, or that Insomniac needed to give Miles something to do until the end of the second act, where he's profoundly used in combination of what's actually happening in the core narrative. I don't know why they're treating Miles like just this person who just like helps his community instead of helping all of New York. It definitely feels that way, like he's regulated to that section where his community takes priority, which I get, but Spider-Man is supposed to help everyone in the city. He's not supposed to play favorites. That was kind of the purpose of the original Spider-Man, where Peter had to choose to save the city over his Aunt May. Like, he had to make that choice, even though it affected him so profoundly that it still impacts him to this very game. Whereas Miles never really has to make that choice. It just seems that Miles is given special treatment. I want him to evolve. I want him to feel the same level of pain that Peter does. And I know people will say that he did with Finn, but Finn chose to be a villain. She chose to give weapons to horrible people that actively killed people, and she also actively killed as well. She's not the same as Aunt May being killed. She did those by choice. Aunt May helped people by choice and sacrificed her own well-being for the greater good of people. Finn spent the majority of her time trying to harm and kill people for revenge that doesn't exclude of everything that she does. So I would say that Miles still hasn't gotten that moment where he really knows what to be Spider-Man means, that you have to sacrifice your own personal well-being for the greater good of everyone else. That's how I've seen it, and it just doesn't seem like it hits the marker here. MJ sections return, and while they are definitely an improvement, they're still the weakest of the game. MJ sections involve basic sneaking elements such as avoiding line of sight, one-hit stunning enemies from behind, and simple distractions. MJ is given platinum level plot armor because she can sneak past lethal hunters who are trained to track and kill the most dangerous prey and mutants in the world with no issue, despite each of them being able to go head-to-head with Spider-Man, the Lizard, Miles Morales, and even Venom. MJ can easily take them down with just a standard taser. Just to convey how much plot armor MJ has, she's given an even more powerful version of the taser that can one-shot the deadly symbiote creatures that can match Peter and Miles in terms of strength and agility while harming the host who's infected with the parasite. Why not just arm everyone with this device and reverse engineer it? Look, I get that MJ sections are a primary example of gameplay before narrative, and she has taken part in a war-torn conflict when documenting Silver Sable's plight in her homeland, but at some point it just becomes pure comedy, especially in this scene. MJ sneaks into the back of one of the hunter's vans, isn't detected despite dropping her phone at the back door of the van, and sneaks through a camp full of these deadly hunters unseen. Kraven even tracks her down and instead of just killing her, lets her go. I mean, this guy has shown not to care about innocent lives whatsoever. And we even learned that he doesn't care for his own family. And MJ is trespassing in his territory. He could have easily broken her neck with one of his massive hands, but just doesn't do it for absolutely no reason. This is not to say I hated Mary Jane. I liked her from a narrative perspective, but from a gameplay perspective, it's clear that the developers gave her special treatment in order to keep her viable. And if you're still unconvinced, this hunter misses her at point blank range while her back is turned. Like, there is no convincing that she was not given special treatment here. That being said, New York is wonderful to explore and full of new activities. Most can feel like busy work, but has been improved from the previous Spider-Man games. Instead, the optional activities are provided over the course of the game and offer some variety to them. For example, unlike Fist's construction missions where you just beat up his goons in a variety of his locations, you'll take out hunter bases and learn about the final location's weak points, after which you can exploit them in order to make the mission a lot easier. But some of the missions still feel like busy work, such as this drone chasing mission or taking photos, but at least they build on either setting up new villains or showcasing the world. Movement is still amazing in this game, with the inclusion of the web wings offering a quicker way to maintain momentum, especially when you're at top of buildings. Using this in a combination with wind tunnels allows you to move quickly across New York. The fast travel system takes only a few seconds, but requires you to complete at least 50% of the district's activities to use it, and sometimes the activities are not available for you to complete 15% of it, so you can't force the fast travel system to unlock. You kind of have to wait as you progress through the main story, so players likely won't have access to the entire map's fast travel system until around 70% of the game. As for the subway system from the original game and Miles Morales, it has been locked off, so none of those entertaining loading screens where you see Miles and Peter in the subway station. I know that a lot of people don't like the loading screens. Me too, I hate loading screens, but I kind of wish they kept the subway system just, for cosmetic purposes or just for entertainment to see what Peter would do underneath there and interact with the people of New York. But what's the power of swinging around New York without the proper suit to complement the situation? Marvel Spider-Man 2 includes many suits to choose from. Some would unlock through gameplay, others through leveling and tokens. There is a lot to choose from, and some have color variants that are integrated into the cutscenes. But not all the cutscenes allow you to use every costume. Some require you to use specific suits for that entire situation, which is fair given the narrative purpose surrounding that suit. I did wish that they brought back some of the OG suits from the original, such as Black Cat's suit, but I guess they just decided this is a time for new types of suits. But I still wish I got the Black Cat suit from the original game. Now, I need to add this because I have no idea if it will be resolved soon, but during my week-long time with Marvel Spider-Man 2, I had a lot of technical issues. Not sure if this was just me, but I experienced a lot of crashes to the point that I got worried that the game would crash at any time, so I would frequently manually save the game. Sometimes I would get the occasional open world glitch, which is expected, this is an open world game, but other times I would get stuck in the game's geometry and be forced to restart the game. I read several reviews and no one seemed to mention these problems, so maybe it's just me, but I experienced a lot of technical problems when playing through this game. Not to the degree that it became so obtusely insane that this game shouldn't have been released, but enough that I took notice to them and was worried about whether the game was going to glitch out again. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is an incredible sequel. It improves on many aspects that made the other games great, from the narrative and the gameplay perspective. Even the sneak-in sections have seen major improvement, but at the cost of giving MJ godlike plot armor for it to work. I did wish Miles' missions include some more exciting themes rather than just helping people within his community with minor issues. Like, give him his own exclusive villain at this point, like something beyond the Tinkerer, like someone who's actually a threat that wants to kill him, like with Peter's set of villains. I get that they share the same enemy pool because they are Spider-Man, but at this point I think Miles deserves his own original creation at this point, given how much trust Insomniac has been given with this IP, seeing the amount of mainline villains that are killed throughout this narrative. Overall, Marvel Spider-Man 2 definitely delivers on an exceptional sequel and truly captures what it means to be Spider-Man. It misses some marks, but the minor complaints for an adventure that succeeds on so much shouldn't be dwarfed on. It is an exceptional game, and I highly recommend it. It is spectacular in every way.
Come on. You're too much, man. Hang in there, Miles.